Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mining Indaba's Digital Diaries, focusing this month on our industry's voices of disruption. Today, I introduce an industry thought leader whose voice is known well within our industry, Sheila Khama. Sheila sits on the Mining Indaba Executive Advisory Board and will share some of her insights around advancing our industry forward and what disruption is needed to achieve this. Sheila, thanks for taking time today to chat with me.
Thank you, Laura. Very nice to be here.
Fantastic. So Sheila, as we know, Mining Indaba is celebrating 30 years of success. And we are going to look at the achievements made in the industry over this 3-decade period. But Sheila, I'd like to reflect on the greater African continent in relation to this time frame. How has mining in Africa advanced over this period?
Yeah, I think it's an important question because, of course, the Mining Indaba attracts participants from throughout the continent. But I think when I think about the strides that we have made, two areas come to mind. In the past, mining used to exist as an island unto itself. We mined and we exported. We have seen much greater integration of mining into the bigger economy, thanks to concepts of domestic linkages, but very specifically local content and the beefing up of local supply, participation by citizens in equity, and processing of minerals, albeit to limited degrees. So I do think the biggest takeaway is that we have linked mining to the bigger economy, but also we have seen intra-trade. We have seen suppliers from South Africa, which is a more established mining entity, make inroads into the interior, all the way to Senegal and other areas. And so I think we've also seen greater intra-trade between African countries in the mineral supply chain.
Fantastic, Sheila. I think we so focus as an industry on moving forward that we don't remember to reflect on some of the great successes and achievements that we've had in our industry. So really great to hear some of your thoughts around the significant strides our industry has made. But Sheila, in spite of our success, we have some way to go in seeing the African mining industry truly succeed. So what in your mind should governments in Africa be doing collectively to see success materialize moving forwards?
Yeah, I think there are two things. Of course, we are successful in mining because we have geology. To be fair, that's nature's gift. That's not us. And I think the biggest thing we can do is leverage this geology to create more industries. And I think what the governments can do collectively is probably two things. First, to understand that mining per se translates into several industries, and to really create a different mindset in which they see mining as the beginning and not the end. There is the tendency to see mining through the eyes of mining companies, but actually mining ought to be seen through the eyes of the industrialists downstream, because that is where the various industries, whether it is steel, aluminium, copper, diamond jewelry, gold, we are somewhat blindsided of this, and we limit our conversations to mining companies. We ought to talk to industrialists. So that's the first thing. The second thing also is to start to think differently about who we are as potential traders. We are not a continent. What we are regions that are endowed with certain minerals. Geology was smart. And so if you look at, say, West Africa, you have the Mano River region, which is rich in iron ore. And then you have the entire West African coast all the way to Ethiopia, which is rich in gold. Nature's telling you something, that it exists in clusters of minerals. We need to see these as potential industrial hubs around which we create corridors for unleashing the industry about which we spoke. If we think of ourselves as just 53 member states, we will not succeed. We should follow the geological footprint to better redefine ourselves.
Sheila, your insights are unbelievably valid, they're brilliant. I think industrial hubs in Africa is absolutely where we need to go as a country. I think that's what mining should be focusing on, not just mining, but the ends to a mean of greater economies in Africa. So thank you, Sheila, for such great insights. But by reverse, it's not only up to governments to drive our industry forward, it is up to industry itself to also play a role in achieving this. From an industry perspective, Sheila, how can we work together to also help drive the future of African mining?
Sure. So I think the biggest contribution that industry can make is invest more in R&D in Africa. Many of the big players invest hugely in laboratories to design technologies for exploration, for mineral extraction, for processing and other things. But these tend to be elsewhere in the world. And what we see in Africa are the benefits of that. But we are not in the space in which the thinking takes place, the critical mass of scientists and the ecosystem that leads to these applied solutions. My sense is that a great investment by mining companies in this space is the future, both in terms of more discoveries, but also in terms of industry and value addition.
Sheila, if industry and government can come together in these areas, I think we will be formidable as a powerhouse in Africa. So, Sheila, some of the things you've spoken about have been quite disruptive in this approach, and it really fits the theme for Mining Indaba 2024, which specifically is embracing the power of positive disruption to deliver a bold new future for African mining. So, Sheila, can you outline in other areas, perhaps, if you want, what positive disruption the African mining industry needs to become relevant, to stay relevant, and to advance into the future?
Sure. So one of the things we know is that all things internet will rule. And that this train has left the station. The only question is who boards and who doesn't board. But that it will leave is the only certainty. Here, there is a level of disruption in the way that we think, in the way that we legislate, because we are now moving into a completely new work space. I think one of the most positive things we can do is use this change to rethink our education system right from the start, to say, what is the future employee of the mine? How can we prepare the future employees so that they are relevant? We also know, sadly, that pandemics are now going to be a huge part of how we live, which is to say remote working is probably the only way to avoid the kind of disruption that we saw with COVID. So I think one of the single most important forms of positive disruption really is to think, how do we become a society in which all things internet are embraced? And how do we work with industry to translate its needs to policymakers in education, such that there is harmony and that in effect, there is complementarity between the type of person leaving school and the type of person that the mining companies are looking for. That there is complementarity between the type of person who joins the union and the unions of the future. The unions of the future will not leverage numbers. It's no longer a numbers game. The numbers of people can only go down. So it begs the question, what does the union of the future look like in an environment in which we want to give employees a voice? This, I think, is the intersection of that positive disruption.
Sheila, there is no doubt that you are indeed a thought leader and a disruptor in your own right in our industry. Thank you for cohesively describing just what the future of African mining looks like if we are to truly succeed. Thank you so much, Sheila, for that insight. Really appreciate your time.
Not at all. I'm glad you thought it was useful.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.